Full spoilers for Dune 2021. Denis Villeneuve's Dune. You've been warned. Full spoilers for. We'll probably keep it to. We won't spoil the book for you guys. It's going to be just part one of the story that is in the movie. So spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. You've been
We
warned.
are reviewing a movie.
Spoilers for anything that it was in the book that would have happened in this movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will say that because I will reference things from the book in that way, but nothing further than this movie.
So let's get into it. I got to run to the bathroom. I'm sorry.
I did too. So we'll...
I loved it. Ben. No, Ryan, because you got to go too.
I can wait, but I also had a good time. I understand the criticisms, but Denis Villeneuve is my favorite modern filmmaker. He knocked that out of the park.
Ben,
okay. Yeah, I absolutely love this movie. I had an absolute blast with it. People have been saying, wow, this is a long movie, but I did not feel the length at all. This definitely was not like No Time to Die, where I felt the length. This one, I was enraptured from scene one. The second we hear that thing speak in the darkness, and then we get the Warner Bros. Logo. I'm like,
oh,
okay,
real quick though, it is such a disappointment that it starts with the miserable and then cuts to the Warner Brothers screen. Like, takes me right out. Like, dude, reverse it.
Terrible choice. It caught my attention, and then the Warner Brothers logo was there, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, upon rewatching it.
Ruined it.
Yeah.
I was expecting something else between the Warner Bros. Logo and whatever the next studio logo was. Like, because if they did that, it's like, the Warner Bros. Something else.
Honestly, the thing that it needed was the, it'd be kind of hokey, but at least I think it would have kept me in the element. It needed the Warner Brothers stuff to be revealed the way that Disney likes to do its castles a lot of the time, where it's in theme to the film.
Yes, because they've done that before.
That. Yeah, it needed that.
Like Batman's done it. Like other movies have done that. Yeah, I thought it was odd.
Yeah.
It was just very bright.
I 100% agree with you. It did catch the attention of like my entire auditorium, where everyone went, "What?" And then it's like Warner Brothers, and I'm like, "Stop it."
Yeah, what did you think, Sparks?
I really, really like it. I think it's I'm gonna sneeze. Sorry.
Bless you. Bananas.
I think it is a really, really good adaptation. That there's a lot of things that struggle, I think, to be good adaptations of a book, and I don't mean like 100% faithful, because I don't think you need something to be one for one. But I think this does a great job of getting a lot of what's there accurately onto the screen, which is really incredible. It's a mood piece. I think it's lovely to look at, for sure. I think it has some key flaws, and one in particular that kind of drives me up the wall, and I honestly have no idea where I'd land on it if I hadn't read the book, but I read the book, so I have a particular feeling about it. But I did talk to other people who didn't, just to kind of gauge, like, oh, where would I have been? I don't know. Those flaws are a bummer, I think, but we'll get into it. But overall, it's still a really good experience, awesome. And I'd rather have it than not have it. So,
hell yeah. What's up, Brandon? How's your bathroom?
What's one of the flaws?
I think the main flaw is that the story of Dune. Obviously, Ryan, you said, because I haven't seen the David Lynch one yet. You said the David Lynch one does the whole book.
It does the whole book in less time.
And simplifies it. It is a simple story. You can do it. You definitely can. You could do the whole book in the runtime of this film.
Yeah, you just lose a lot of nuance. Yeah,
you definitely would, and I agree with that. And I think that it is a smart choice to split into two parts. My problem is that if you're going to split a film into two parts, I think it's a bummer that I come out of part one and I'm not as emotionally attached to certain characters as I feel like I should be, especially being familiar with them from the books. But knowing, like, I talked to other people and they're like, well, I'm kind of waiting for part two to care about X, Y, or Z. And I'm like, that's fair, because that's not here.
Yeah.
I think Gurney is unfortunately shortchanged. I love Josh Brolin, but he's basically Josh Brolin in this movie to me. Mm-hmm. And I think there was such clear opportunity to make Gurney just as resonant as I think Jason Momoa gets to be as Idaho. People come out of there feeling like he's one of their favorites, and I'm like, I get it, because he's the only person who seems to have a actual strong emotional reaction to Paul, and Paul reciprocates it, and so there's like something clearly there. Another person that people felt like had like emotional attachment was Kynes, but so the main flaw at the heart of that is Jessica. I think that they do a disservice to Jessica and Leto, their relationship. If you didn't read the book, it ain't there. Like, it's just not there. You don't know how important it is. You don't know what it means or why to care about it. I think that's a huge flaw because as we talked about, without spoiling the book, but as we talked about in our book club special, I personally see Jessica as the hero of the book and Paul as the protagonist, and Jessica doesn't come across as the hero here because we're not allowed to connect her the way I think we should.
That's everything you're saying is 100% right. Denis Villeneuve has been, one of his criticisms just as a filmmaker is his lack of emotion sometimes. I feel, and I think this is a huge problem because we all read the book, and it's one of those things where like it is so much easier for me to separate the book than you, Sparks, just from what I could tell. It is so easy for me to just view this as a movie. The book doesn't exist when I'm talking about this movie right now, right? Sure. And like for me, like it's super easy. Like everything that we needed to know about their relationship is on screen for me. Because again, Leto is not the main character. He's not as an important character as Oscar Isaac, the actor would be. The few lines that they do have together, they're powerful enough. His one line of "I should have married you." That's all I need to know. That like, I think the movie holds a lot of stuff without saying a lot. But that's me. That's me though.
Well, one of the things that I was going to bring up in my notes here is I think everything in this movie needs to be there. I think that Denis Villeneuve built a adaptation of a book that takes out just enough to keep the narrative moving. The movie's 2.5. Like it could easily be 3. We read the book. If you want to keep everything in there, you could easily make this movie 3. So you have, I think the things that he takes out are a lot of the kind of more human moments that we're missing to kind of create the emotional impacts, so that he can keep the narrative flowing in a streamlined way. And I think for the most part, that's what the movie feels like it is anyway.
Yeah. And I agree with you, Sparks. Like again, like after Blade Runner and now this, like the emotion that's in Dune is not in this movie. Like I can admit that easy. So it's easier for me to, again, this is not the book. This is a adaptation. This is a new thing. And
sure. And like, and I can acknowledge that. And like, I'm coming at it with the knowledge of the book, especially because it's fresh and saying like, oh, this is the thing. I can tell you the thing that I feel like is missing.
Yeah.
But I went with like 8 other people, and half of them haven't read the book, and half of them come out of it going, well, I didn't care about this, that, or that. They were like, I enjoyed it because I liked watching the visuals of it a lot, but like I didn't care about Paul. I didn't care about Jessica. I didn't care about when the Duke died. I didn't care, other than the fact that like I like Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
Like I didn't care about these characters. I didn't connect to them. I didn't have this. And I'm like, there was a way to do it where you could have cared about them. And it easily could have been done. And I do think it's a bummer where you have a lot of people coming out who are like, yeah, I enjoyed it, but I kind of feel like I need part 2 now to like go back and actually care about some of this.
And that is the unfortunate side effect of breaking it up the way it is and the way Dune the book is.
Oh, did we lose him?
Oh, I think we did.
Yeah, we lost Ryan for a second.
No, Emma, why?
Might be Emma. Well, I was gonna say it kind of feels like it's a power outage. He just texted me.
Oh gosh.
We might have lost him.
Oh no. Not for Dune.
Oh good man.
Lord. Gosh. Can he get on his phone and rejoin us on his phone? It'll be shitty, but
I've done it once before too on my phone.
We should probably, do we want to keep the review going, or should we wait till we hear from him?
We're doing it. Like, give your thoughts, and hopefully we can get Ryan back.
Well, I was just going to say that the emotional kind of through line. Yeah, we lost the screen. The emotional through line for Dune doesn't feel as complete as like the story does. I'll push back a little bit on the criticism that doesn't feel like a complete movie, because I do think it does. But I also feel the same way about Infinity War. But the emotional arcs that the characters are meant to go through does feel like it's cut in half.
I'm sorry, I'm messaging Ryan real quick.
Yeah.
I think, and this goes back to kind of our book club thing, and I don't think this is minorly, my friends, getting into like the tiny spoiler territory of something that we have no clue if they'll actually reference in part 2, which is just that Paul kills somebody at the end of this movie. You know what happens. You saw the movie if you're listening to us talk about this. In the book, there's a very powerful moment of a funeral ritual related to the Fremen culture that happens with that character, and I suspect that it will not be in part 2. And I think it's a major misstep to have not had elements of it important, because I think it would have made this feel like a more complete story. Brendan, this is going to your point. I think you needed Paul having some connection to that funeral ritual to make it feel like he has become part of this, and I don't think it's conveyed well enough in the film. And yes, that is an amount of me like bringing book knowledge to it, but it is also me sitting there as a person watching the movie, and I'm like, I don't think we got the complete arc there of him integrating. And I think we could have lost some of the Zendaya, Chani flash forwards, which, by the way, her name is supposed to be pronounced Hani. The C is silent. I learned this.
Oh,
in looking up
she's Cheney in the audiobook.
Yes, and it's incorrect in the film too. It's all over the place. The pronunciations are not good, my friends, in this movie. So don't trust anything.
Because that was one of the things I was really looking forward to when I finally saw this movie. Because as I was reading the book, there's like, I said in our book club review, it was like Kwistos Haderach. It's like, how the heck do you say that? Or when I pronounce words in my head and then they say those same pronunciations, like, cool, I was saying it right, but then it's like, hey, there's like 5 different words that they're not pronouncing right. It's like, well,
the moment the movie's like the Harkonnens, I was like, oh man.
Yeah, I was calling them the Harkonnens.
I just had a moment where like when Sparks went to see Dragon Ball Evolution, and it's like the Piccolo's or Ozaru. I'm like, oh, I'm all wrong.
No. Yeah.
Hey, we're back.
There. It wasn't Emma.
The only thing we were really detailing was that we felt Brandon was saying how he felt like the film does tell a complete arc, and I was saying I feel like it's a little lacking just because the point I was bringing up is in reference to the man he kills, that I think we could have had a little bit of the funeral ritual stuff to make it feel like Paul was integrating into the culture. Which is also just also a flaw, I think, of like the exoticism applied to the Fremen culture to do a lot of shortchanging rather than actually expanding on it. Making it feel full force. Which also led to me the particular topic we were on just a second ago, Ryan, is I think we could have sacrificed a few of Zendaya's visions earlier in the film to have had time for some of these things.
Oh, I would 100% agree with that. And that is, man, I wonder, this had to be in from the original script of having Chani be there from like get-go, right? Like, I think like to make it more, I don't know, to make it feel more prophetic, more like fantasy, like he's having these visions from the get-go. You know the girl is real. It's not like, is it real or not? So like for a business reason, Hollywood reason, I get having those flashbacks. I do agree. I like the ending a lot. I do think it is impactful. I do agree, like it's anticlimactic for the big sci-fi movie at the end. The funeral stuff is absolutely going to be at the start of the next movie. I do think it should have been here. I do agree with you. It should have ended with his like full acceptance to the Fremen, but that's probably what like the first half of that movie is going to be in the next part, right?
For sure.
And so that's a difficult thing to, where do you cut it off at, you know?
Well, yeah. And I don't think we needed full acceptance into the Fremen. I think that there just could have been more done. And certainly, again, like, yeah, I'm using what I know from the book, but like this was a common feeling of like, I think there could have been a sense of closure revolving around Jamis and the blade and what that meant for Paul.
Yeah.
And I don't think Paul has a sense of a complete arc of like, because there is, even if you are going by book standards where they cut it off, Paul goes through a complete arc up to this point, which is, this is the end of my life as the son of the Duke. I am now becoming something else.
Yeah.
And the movie doesn't quite nail that concept. Part of this is also tied to like everything about what's happening with Paul kind of almost being completely isolated and confined to that moment in the tent with his mom, and then not really connective tissue anywhere else.
Yeah, again, like when you're adapting such a book like this, like I have to imagine that there was talks of like, no, we ended with the funeral. I mean, I'm really curious, like in like 4 years when we get the behind the scenes of all these movies, like the process of like, why did you divide it the way you did?
Well, I think that there's something to be said about Zendaya being in this movie far more than she is in the book, because she's not really in this half of the book. Having that be, oh, we know you want Zendaya for this role. You should probably put her in more of it because she's a hot actress right now.
Yes, it'll get people in seats. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So I think that puts her in the trailer a lot. And when I
Yeah.
remember watching the trailer, thinking to myself, like, I technically haven't met Hani yet. Like, where are these scenes coming from?
I do think the inclusions of them work for the movie very well. The stuff that is there. And you bring up the scene in the tent, Sparks. I love that scene, but that's just because like that is my accumulation of everything I love about science fiction and fantasy turning into one scene where he's having the vision about the holy war of unquenchable fire and like the war in my father's name. That is my shit. That is my favorite thing in the planet. And I think the acting is great. I think the message, the vision itself is extremely effective. Effective. I wish it was more pervasive.
Yes, don't misunderstand. Like, I like the scene. I just don't think that scene permeates itself enough into Paul's internality of what is happening to him is not conveyed as well as I think it could be, or may even should be, to the audience of what Paul is actually wrestling with. Because and this came up very well because my mom asked me, the only part of the movie that confused her was why Paul was having visions of the man he kills. And visions of him like being a friend. She's like, I don't get it. Like, I thought everything he saw was the future. Because the movie doesn't elaborate that. It isn't clear that Paul sees potentials but not set. And like for like hard movie rules, that's a thing you do have to iterate. It is not as easy to incline from nuance because we have so much film pop culture that tells us characters can see a future that is set. That and if you are not given the visual, the knowledge in the terminology of the film to tell you otherwise, that will be your belief. So when he is killed, it wasn't enough to retroactively make them understand, oh, this was a potential future, not the future. I do think like there is room where, just like that with the stuff with the tent, we needed to see more than just the holy war. We needed to see in that moment something that was the opposite, because this happens to Paul in the book where he sees separation. This is one path, this is another path, to make it more clear, like Paul is making choices, not being driven down a singular route.
And that is something that I do really like about the movie, though. Paul isn't as, he's not as good as he is in the book. Like he doesn't have as much character. Like they strip out. When you translate a book like Dune, it is impossible to translate everything. It is just, there's too much. I think narrowing it down, making it more personal, that's just between them, for the movie, I think it's exceptional. I think it really works. I really do. I think for audience members who aren't familiar with the book, having it just be about them and what Paul sees about his potential with the Fremen, that for the movie, that's all you need. And for me, again, I think that it worked exceptionally well.
That guy was Stilgar for the longest time.
Oh, Jameis?
When I thought Jameis was the actor who plays Jameis was Stilgar. So when Stilgar shows up, I'm like, oh,
that's not who I thought it was. Yeah.
Interesting.
I like it. It is just a matter of, I think, the important part of what is Paul's story in the book is that he is aware that he is making choices that decide a burdensome purpose for the future of what's going to happen.
Yes.
And I don't think that the movie conveys, even by the end of it retroactively, well enough that Paul is actively choosing his path and that he is wrestling with that decision. In the sense, like, even with the tent scene, as much as I like it and as good as it is an amount of, you have put me here, I am now doing that, which is why I understand why people come away from it like confused and wondering, why is Paul only on a path of going towards this one future, but then there's this weird thing with Jameis, who he ends up killing, and it is just enough where I feel like Paul's stuff could have been fleshed out more.
Sure.
I because I only want to live in my negatives for a little bit, which are knocks on the film. I only have 2 points I want to bring up. One is that I want to reference this piece, and I'll say the title and the author at the end of what I'm about to say. But this is something I resonated with when I read it. This is an excellent piece that talks about like a lot of the appropriation and some of the mispronunciation of what happens when you are stripping down a lot of these Middle Eastern pieces and some of the religion that is pulling from the MENA, which is Middle Eastern North Africa folk and their heritage and Islamic stuff to Americanize it essentially. And this is a great piece about it, but I thought this particular paragraph was really good. But overall, the Fremen characters in Dune Part 1 lack the interiority they need to come across as something other than stock types. So the film, through erasure, still ends up engaging in Orientalism that Villeneuve seemed to be trying to avoid. The motivations of Stilgar, Zendaya, Chani, and Shadow Mapes are all murky, and their relationships with Paul aren't narratively clear because so much of their belief system and identity is left nebulous. They are noble, exoticized others, and it's unintentionally telling that Hans Zimmer's score loads up on MENA folk music traditions, but that no actors of MENA heritage have speaking roles among the Fremen. This is a culture used for atmosphere and aesthetics, but approached with no deeper curiosity, which is unfortunate because there is so much that you can flesh out in the Fremen culture. And that piece is Denis Villeneuve's Dune is all world building and no world living by Roxana Haddadi over on Polygon. And I resonated with that when I read it, and I resonated with that whole piece. I think that there's a lot there that is like, it is because when we talked about the book, that the book is so progressive with these kind of things that it sucks that there is just an amount of, you take out words like jihad and you take out some of this religious stuff because we can't see people of that culture as anything other than terrorists. And we can't make it more nuanced and we can't make it more complex. And I'm not throwing all of this on Villeneuve or the film's work, but it's unfortunate because there was an opportunity here to make more progressive step forward, but we just really had to back all the way away from it.
Yeah. That's true.
Which
true.
Maybe part 2 can change. Maybe part 2 can explore the deeper Fremen culture and go for all that stuff because now part 1 has sold and it won't matter. But it is. I do feel that, and I do feel where that is, and certainly the pronunciations are a bummer.
I definitely will agree with it. Like, the Fremen aren't in this movie enough to really know who they are, so they are the exotic people of the land. Yeah, that's what. Yes. And part 2, it's all about them and how they get explored. So hopefully they fix that stuff. Like, man, like, that's all right. Everything they're saying is 100% right.
And it's also very personal, like being 100% transparent. 100%. Like Roxana Haddadi is very honest about like where this personally connects with them and why why it feels like erasure.
I'm a white dude, so like my opinion does not matter on this whatsoever. Do not listen to me. It doesn't matter. Like, this is a sci-fi story that's 10,000 years in the future that is using other cultures in a positive way and not in a negative way. I don't find it disrespectful because like people in the Middle East, like he's taking inspirations for like people who live in deserts, right? And like people who live in deserts wear desert garb. That's not racist because that's just what they wear. You know what I mean? Like, it's when you're taking inspirations from Middle Eastern culture and then it's on screen, like it's hard. Like, I understand, like, you want to be 100% on level all the time. It's Hollywood, baby. It sucks.
No, absolutely. And I think the larger point in that snippet that I was reading specifically is that, you know, it's the aesthetics, but without context.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to make it more. We're going to leave it on the shallowest portrayal level that we can, with so much of it. And that's where it's like, I understand, especially if you are familiar with the source material, which she is, where you go, this is not paying the proper respect and representation, and it brings up an excellent point. Like, I think the score is very good. I don't think it always works with the visuals, but overall I like it. But Hans Zimmer is pulling from those vocal cues, while the people who are actually representative of the races that he is alluding to with the intonations of the music are not speaking in the culture, and they're characters who are present but not part of that. And I'm like, this is a fair assessment of how Hollywood works. But you're right, Ryan, it is exactly like Hollywood, but I do think it's an important note to point out.
No, absolutely. Yeah,
you brought up Hans Zimmer's score. If you don't mind, I'd like to talk a bit about that.
Yeah.
I've been pretty critical about Hans Zimmer for a number of years. I think there are many films that he just phones it in, and then sometimes we get like a really good like an Interstellar or something. And he, I think for the most part, does a really good job with the score. There's a lot, like he does use the vocals, and I think that one of the things that I actually really liked about Hans Zimmer's score that worked with the visuals that Denny is presenting is that the film is meant to feel very monolithic. The everything is meant to be big and long lasting and ancient, but in a way that everything is made out of stone. Like it's not, but it looks at want the stone look of it at all, that so it doesn't look like it's decaying or whatever. So it looks like a new universe, even though it's supposed to be an old universe. I think the score heightens that kind of bigness in a lot of places that I really appreciated.
Yeah.
I agree with you, and I want to go a step further to say that there are certain scenes where I think there's maybe one or two times where Hans maybe threw too many times the undulating of the vocals at us, and it maybe should have allowed it to be a quieter moment. But I also think he used it quite well to convey things that are like, this is impactful. What you're seeing right now means something very dire that's coming. The Gom Jabbar is an incredible piece in its own that I want to talk about. But like, there's even moments where, like, even if you aren't familiar, if you're a person who doesn't know the books, that kind of thing, you are watching something happen on screen, and because of how the score is complementing it, you are gathering the implications of what it means.
Bagpipes, baby.
Even if the visuals are not saying it all, or the story of the dialogue isn't saying it all, the music is.
If the visuals of Seleucus Secundus and the Sardaukar army don't do it for you, the Imperial chanting will tell you exactly what you need to know about the Sardaukar.
Right. Yes, exactly. And I think that's utilized incredibly well.
Really bold choice to start the movie.
We talked about that while you were in the bathroom, and it pissed us both off that right after that they cut to the Warner Brothers logo.
Yeah,
a big bright logo, not like Mad Max where they turn it into the Mad Max logo. Big
That's
bright
what we
blue.
said.
Yeah.
We said that it should have gone the Disney route where the castle is like themed to the film. It should have done that, and I think it would have been at least a little smoother.
Hey Ben, you saw Dune. Why don't you say something about it?
I did see Dune. You guys are more in tune with it than I am, because I saw.
What do you mean? We watched the same movie.
We watched the same movie. Read the same book.
Well, you're more entrenched in other
We're
stuff.
more awake.
Ben, all it was is like I did two things, which is that I wanted to chase things I was seeing from people who were critical of specific elements that I wanted to find where I was grounded in connection with them, and the other one was that I wanted to check with a very large party of people that I saw it with where they landed, because I was bringing book material and not all of them were.
Because there was one thing something that I was going to criticize the movie for was because once again this is a super thick book. It's a super dense book, and obviously in a 2.5-hour movie you can't put everything in it. Like, I was hoping to see more of Thufir Hawat. I was hoping to see more of
I got good news. Part 2.
Yeah, I know. There's part 2, but I was hoping to see more of like the scene between Paul and Jessica in the conservatory. Like, we don't see the conservatory at all, because we do get a scene about like water planting, about water being used to help the palm trees grow, and then Paul's like, let's just get these trees out, let's give the water to everyone else.
100 men a day.
Yeah, like 100 men. Like 100 men are like, these trees can give water to 100 men. And sorry, trick-or-treaters are at my house right now. And it's like I was hoping to see more Thufir, but yeah, we're gonna get that later.
Well, I want to bring up something, if you don't mind. One of the things I do find interesting is that I also saw it with someone who hadn't, not taking book material with them, and they. But this is just one person, so I didn't want to pretend it was a sample size. But I think that it's interesting that they choose not to explain what a lot of things that the book does. Thufir is in this movie. We don't know what a mentat is in this movie. Like, if you ask the person who saw this movie what a mentat is, they'll be like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
See,
I think that's smart to keep the narrative moving.
See, here's the thing, like. They don't go mentat, noun. Here's the definition. They go Thufir Hawat. He's a mentat. He does the eye thing. He does calculations in his brain really quick. You know what a mentat is. He's good at math. It's not.
I wasn't saying otherwise. I was saying they don't need to. The word is not mentioned in this movie. The word mentat is not in this movie.
They don't
And-
never say mentat.
And I think that I personally fall under the you don't need it, because that character, what he is, isn't important to this story.
Mhm.
It's just kind of background information. He's just a
Yeah.
weird alien like you see in Star Wars.
Yeah.
But I can see the argument that for other people it would be necessary.
Yes.
I personally don't agree with that, but I'm kind of like saying that I get it.
Listen, we've talked about it with the Dune book. This is not a movie that holds your hand. There are certainly audience members who need their hand held more than others, and that's just movies sometimes are like that. Like they're gonna be tough for people who aren't ingrained into it. I am super glad that it's like, oh, Fufir Howard, my favorite mentat, my favorite human calculator who can calculate everything in the world. Tell me, what's this? And like I'm so glad it's Bing Bang Bong, because like if you're just watching the movie, it all makes sense. It's all there, baby.
I don't disagree with that. My struggle, and I think the stuff for newer audiences to the material and everything is the concept of what Paul is weighing him inside of himself, and how that relates, and the concept of like what him going through the culture of the Fremen at the end means. Like I don't think that's conveyed as well as it could, and I do fall back on this was my other like really major one, and it's one I feel pretty strongly about, I guess, is that I just truly feel like Jessica should have been a more, like if I could have one character who was done more service, it would be her, because I think that people come out of this movie and most people came away saying that Duncan, Idaho, or Kynes were their favorites, and I get it because they had the most, I think, emotionally resonant stories in the film.
Jessica has the most emotion out of any character in this movie.
They had the most for you to be able to connect with, but I don't think that Jessica was given all the service she wanted, and I do think that like because I know that it threw a lot of people like they didn't get that Jessica was like the progressiveness we talk about in the book, like about like Jessica having been a concubine and like why her and Leto aren't married. I don't think that the audience needs to care about the Duke too much, but they do need to get how much Jessica does. And I don't think that the movie conveys that.
Sure, I can understand that.
I don't think it comes all the way across. I think that having talked with a lot of other people that feel the same way, and I do think that a story element that could have been there that I think would have been actually very clever of the film to have done. When you're watching the movie and it has the betrayal moment with Yue, if we had the same bit from the story where Hawat was suspicious of Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
For the audience, it's the inverse of what the book did. The book told us who it was, like well in advance. If the audience thinks it's Jessica up until the moment he bends down, that hooks them in and has this suspicion on Jessica that everyone's now able to like sympathize with her on. And I think that would have gone a great mileage to making her the emotional core of the film that maybe it needed.
I kind of wish we had the scene between Hawat and Jessica from the book where Hawat is like kind of like, hey, are you not a Harkonnen spy? And she uses the voice on him, and it kind of straight up shows him that it's not Jessica, and scares the living crap out of him too.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up the voice. I really like how they visualize or more create the voice. I think that's really well translated from the book, and far scarier than I assumed it would be.
Oh yeah,
I agree.
In the David Lynch version, it's just like a telepathy or like mind control. You just walk over. But like who was it? I think it was either Variety or somebody did like break down a scene with Denis Villeneuve, and he did the Gon Jabbar scene. And he was talking about that he wanted the feeling that like you don't even know what you just did. You literally black out when the voice happens to you. So Paul literally blacks out and wakes up in front of her, and that is so effective. Ben, I remember sitting next to you when that first happened in the theater, and like, oh shit, that's wild.
Or when Jessica says, "Give me the knife," like that is scary.
Yeah.
When Paul first does it to Jessica, I was like, "Oh shit,
get away from me!"
Like the second. Go ahead. The second Paul uses like in when they're having breakfast and she's like, use the voice, and he uses the voice and she's like, not good enough, but close. I was like, oh, so that's how. But when the Reverend Mother uses it on Paul, I'm like, yee! I'm like, I almost was.
Oh my god, you're so right. You see like the weakest point of the voice, and then you see the strongest point, and they're both visualized differently. That's really cool.
It was really good, smart movie storytelling. I definitely, before we saw the movie, I imagined the way they were going to interpret it was something like, I guess what you're saying, like David Lynch's Dune did, but I was imagining something like when the Fellowship meet Kate Blanchett in
Galadriel.
yes
Mm.
in The Lord of the Rings, and
Yeah.
Frodo hears her, and it does that whole thing. I was picturing something kind of like that, but I like this so much better.
Mhm.
The Gom Jabbar scene is, I think, it is masterful storytelling with the way that he's able to convey the sensation of Paul's hand burning with only using a single shot of a burnt hand, and
Mhm.
everything else is
And the-
different
and-
interpretation of the pain.
A criticism aside of like the score, which you are right, I love the score. I think it's
I
besides
do
like
too.
besides the abundance of yelling, which I do really enjoy. This is Hans Zimmer's best
Broly.
score. This is Hans Zimmer's best score. He's gonna win an Oscar for the score. There's no doubt in my mind. I love it so much, especially the Gon Jabbar scene, because there's so many different sounds happening just with nothing actually happening. There's a specific shot where it zooms in, and it's like wow, and it's like that's just a fake noise, and it's scaring me. It's so effective.
This is exactly what I was saying earlier with, like, there are certain moments where the score is creating the implication of the what would be the subtext in the book, what would be the stuff that's not being able to be said.
Yeah.
And I do think that when it's doing that, it's masterful.
He apparently toyed with the idea of making it a voiceover for the movie, which thank goodness he didn't go with. But I think the music in that way serves that purpose.
Yeah, music.
What the purpose would need to for a voiceover.
Oh yeah, music makes that emotion happen. Yeah. Man, now it's just all positives from here, baby. All positives for me. The look of this movie is insane.
Oops, all positives.
Oops, all positives. Like, obviously there's CGI in this movie. Giant sandworms don't exist. Almost all of the sets in this movie are practical. It's insane. This movie, I still cannot fathom that multiple Disney movies cost more than this movie did, and this movie looks this good. I can't believe it. I just can't.
To be fair, crunch time is a problem for VFX artists at Alvarado ILM.
It's true. Still, excuses. Man, the ornithopters, they look exactly how I thought they'd look from the books. Exactly. They are the insects with the flying wings. Shai Hulud,
dragonflies.
it's like a butthole. Dragonfly, yes. He's got the Shai Hulud butthole teeth. I love it.
I'm really glad I wasn't quite sold on the design of the sandworms when we first saw them. But when I see that sandworm coming up from under
the harvester.
No, not the harvester. The with the Sardaukar and Kynes. She calls over the maker, and it's kind of like twirling, like almost like a disposal,
Whirlpool? Yeah,
like a whirlpool, but with like razor sharp teeth. Pirates of the Caribbean 3. So like it, and it. I think that's a really effective image that you could only get with that design. And I'm just for that image alone, I'm happy that this is the design they went with.
The way the sand like deviates in like a way I've never seen sand do before. It's like such a cool, like they have some type of machine that does that. Yeah, man. Ben, why don't you say a positive?
Sorry, no, trick or treaters just came up my house and they're ringing the doorbell. So
I get it.
I love the way this world looks. I absolutely. One of my favorite characters in this movie is Oscar Isaac as a Duke Leto. I absolutely love him the whole time. I love how, like, when Stilgar first shows up, he spits on the table, and then Idaho instantly spits back, and they all like go. Puh! I thought that scene was hilarious.
That scene got laughs in my theater. I'm so happy. I didn't expect it.
It did. It did get laughs. I laughed.
Yeah.
But Oscar Isaac was just. I mean, he was in the movie for very long, but it still hurt seeing him seeing him like dead and almost him killing the bear. I was like, dang it.
He knows he's doomed. And you could feel it. He can feel it. There's like a sense of sadness like the whole time. And obviously if you read the book, you know, but like even in the movie, like it just feels off the whole time with him. And it's like, man, it's not gonna end well.
The Baron design, the prosthetic work they do on Skarsgård is so disturbing. When he's eating the food is so gross. I really like how they visualize it with the kind of hover spine that he's got. Mm-hmm. I think that's all really cool, really well visualized. We talked about our favorite characters on the book. Who's the favorite characters in the movie?
Well, my favorite character is not Yui because he's only in the movie for 5 minutes. and he still serves the exact purpose that he does in the book, just a way less. In the movie, I think it's Duncan Idaho.
Mhm.
Like it's an easy answer, but like really, like he has such a presence, and he's like, "Am I the only one having fun here?" And I'm like, yeah, you kind of are.
That's the bummer, I think, in Gurney, that Josh Brolin's not given the opportunity. I think he needed the song. I think he needed a song.
I liked his
I think
scene, but he needed the ballast set. Yeah.
he needed more of a moment with Paul to show that he has a not the same but similar relationship with Paul that Idaho has, and you
Yes.
just don't get that, and that sucks. Like
Yeah.
that's just a bummer because like Gurney is a character like rife with potential, and Josh Brolin's an incredibly talented actor, and they needed something to like separate him from the crowd. I think.
Yeah.
I won't
maybe
say. Oh, go ahead.
maybe potentially more Gurney in the second movie. Who's to say?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Like
No, this is for the audience.
yeah. I mean, like if we get him, you know, more, but I want that I do understand where a lot of people come out of this film feeling like everybody is kind of on a very dour, serious tone.
Yes.
Every single character, and then there's Jason Momoa, and like he's the only thing that's not like that. And I'm like, you know, and it didn't have to be that.
But here's that also I will push back a little because like not every movie has to have jokes in it. Sometimes movies can be serious.
It's not about jokes. It's about good Lord, like just having a smile moment between Gurney and Paul. It's not about necessarily jokes. It's having like that relationship connection.
I personally found throughout the movie there was enough small bits of humor and emotional to like Denis Villeneuve is a very, very serious filmmaker for sure.
To Sparks' what Sparks is talking about, there's only one scene where Gurney smiles in the whole movie, and I think that's the only time that Josh Brolin actually seems like he's enjoying his time on the movie. Not to say he's not.
No, his scene with his scene with Paul when he's training, where he's like, "They're animals." I think he's really good in that scene.
No, I'm not saying he's not. I didn't even mean to imply that. That's what I meant. But there is I'm giving kind of Sparks an example for what he was saying is, it's the scene where he teases Paul for being late to like the war meeting, and that's like the only time that he gives him like what Idaho does, like, oh, you're growing muscle, like that kind of like banter with this young protege.
Yeah, I think they didn't. I don't think they wanted to have two of the same character. I think. Which was kind of the problem.
And I get that.
Yeah,
I get that. I just think there was a way to still make Gurney feel not as much like another Hawat or another stand-in for the Duke.
Yeah.
Because I'll put it this way: in the film, like he just feels like Piccolo standing next to another Piccolo. And I just think that there was a way. And again, like I think even just having him sing a single song gives something more to make him separate.
Yeah.
I want to say my favorite character. To kind of mention this point first, I think for the most part, and I won't discredit anything that you guys have said on, because I think for the most part, Denis Villeneuve does a really good job of updating Dune for the 21st century. It does feel more like a more modern story, much in the same way that Lord of the Rings did when it came out. Very similar kind of updating to, it's keeping the same core of what had come before the 60s, but updating it for a more modern sensibility. I think for the most part they do that well in the characters, but the one who gets it the best is by far Duncan Idaho, because he feels like Jason Momoa's got this locked down. Lovable badass, goofball badass. Like nobody's occupying that space right now. And he's just like, that's all I'm ever going to be, is the goofy badass. You know, I can kick your ass, but also I'm down to have a beer with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that works. I think that works for Duncan in general. I think he's well cast as Duncan. I think Duncan gets a really cool action sequence. Also, I really liked what they did with him, making him my favorite character in the movie.
I got a negative. It's not like a super negative, but like now that I've seen every Denis Villeneuve movie, he's run into the early action movie Chris Nolan problem where a lot of his action is very floaty. There's not a lot of actual impact or weight to his fights. All the Duncan Idaho fight, he's flying in the air and he's punching a dude. The fantasy Sardaukar fight in the desert with Paul, there's like no connection. I've watched 3 times, so like I watched it. There's like no connection. It's very soft. That's because he's not comfortable making action movies yet. And I just think over time he's a drama filmmaker. He's not an action filmmaker, and he'll get better over time.
I think you're right, and I think he's benefited a lot by being able to go out wide and let you imply the action through the use of the shields. Which the shields are visualized incredibly well. I think they're really cool, and one of the best like well-told things because you get the concept of the red and the blue so quickly, and so you know when like a hit is serious and when a hit isn't from far away.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very smart, but it is a way that he's able to obscure his lack of contact action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are certain fights like smaller skirmishes that are good, but like when you really focus on character action, it's very floaty. Like there's a specific shot like where Duncan just like flies in the air, and I'm like, this whole movie's been very serious until this moment.
There's a bit where where he's flying in the ornithopter, being chased by a laser beam. Where I'm like, did I just walk into a different movie?
Hell yeah.
Because it does feel like they were like, CGI person, just make a cool action movie for a second.
Yeah,
I think it looks really cool.
Yeah, Denis Villeneuve, despite making a big sci-fi movie, not interested in CGI at all.
Yeah.
They're not my favorite characters, but I do love their performances. I just love how they present themselves. Are Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron, because he's just like repulsive. He's hideous. It's just you see him on screen and you instantly know, like, oh, you bad guy. I do not like you. And
when it's a gift, not a gift.
Yeah, but also, I can't remember his name. He's the guy from
The Flying Dutchman's coming for you, Jack. Oh wait, wrong movie. Sorry,
David Dastmalchian, the Polka Dot Man.
Yeah, Polka Dot Man, and Baba Yaga from Ant-Man and the Wasp. But
he's having a good time. Have you seen his tweets? Like, I love this.
Yeah,
he's so.
I love him as a Peter.
Piter.
P-I-T-E-R. It's Piter, right? Yeah. I mean, yeah. He's only in the movie for a hot second. He's only in the book for a hot second. But just looking at him, and also I kind of like how the Mentats have like this little tattoo.
They have stained lips. That's their design.
But just looking at him and just seeing him, just you can tell he's just a slimy guy.
His eyes like blink in like different directions. Like,
oh man, I just love how those two. It kind of bums me out because even when I was reading the book, I was hoping to see more of this character because he's like, oh, my beloved Mentat is gone. And I was like, that was quick. I was hoping to see more of this guy. Yeah. But at the same time,
there's poison.
Yeah. Oh, the poison scene was actually really good. However,
here I lie, here I remain, baby.
Like even the Baron who put his shield up right before he went to the Duke, and that saved him from the poison. But everyone else just like drops dead. It's like,
I'll tell you what. Huey being my favorite character from the book, I was like, it bummed me out that he wasn't in the movie more. But my favorite scene in the book is the tooth scene. And I just wish he would have like Leto would have falling asleep. Remember the tooth, because he just kept repeating that.
Right.
But like the scene is like it's perfect. Like I do this for my wife. It sucks, but also like I want to take him out at the same time. I obviously would have loved more. Perfect encapsulation of the character right there.
Yeah. I think for the most part, the dialogue is able to deliver a lot of exposition. I think there's a couple of places where it fails, but for the most part, there's a lot of exposition that the dialogue is handled very well. I think it does feel natural a lot of the time that these characters would be saying these things that are also building the world that the audience is watching.
I'll tell you what, the movie does a brilliant thing of opening with Chani and just saying, this is what the story is. We are on Arrakis. The Harkonnens are here. They're stealing our shit.
Who will be our next oppressors?
Who will be our next oppressors? That sets the movie so much better than the book. Like if you're jumping into the book, like I think that's a great opening. So then you get your conflict immediately, and you know who the adversaries are. You know everything. It's great.
So another positive, because I said earlier how much I love how this movie looks and what the designs are. The scale of the sandworms, I absolutely love. Like. Because in the book they say, "Oh, that's big," and unfortunately, because I grew up in America and I can't really convert meters to feet and inches, like when they say, "Oh, it's about X meters long," I'm like, "How big are meters again? What's long?"
I know that once you add 2 zeros, you're screwed.
Yeah,
half a mile. One of them was like half a mile.
Seeing that or that harvester getting swallowed up by the sandworm, it was one of those parts of the movie. Sorry, it's one of those parts of the movie where.
To his point, I think it's interesting that we see 2 different sandworm sizes.
Well,
the one that eats the and I think that's really cool. A cool visual storytelling of like, they vary in size because the one that eats Kynes is not the same size as the one that eats the harvester. Right. Because that one is much bigger.
Yeah.
So
We see one at the end. That's like,
as I was trying to say is that this movie puts into scope of how gargantuan, that's what I was looking for, these monsters are, or these sandworms are. Because you have this behemoth of a contraption just easily just gets sinking into the sand like no one's business. And you don't even see the full worm. You just see the mouth.
Sarlacc pit.
Yeah, essentially it is like a Sarlacc pit. And even when you get to the sandworm scene with Paul, and I love how they put the drum sand into this movie.
Oh yeah, there's a bit that I really like when there's the only kind of bit that like Gurney and Duncan have as like a brotherly moment when they're talking is when, my God, man, you've gone native, and they're just like, here's the sand repurposer or whatever, and they're like, what does it do? Here, okay, but you didn't answer my question. I still don't know what it does. You just handed it to me.
It processes sand. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then we see it later in the movie, and it's like, and I was like, I just thought that was a really funny bit. It's like, what's that? This? I still don't know what this is.
Doesn't help.
Although that's a cool tool where you get to, you're in your tent, the sand covers you, and you get a little tunnel to get out of
the
sand.
Fremen
water just sounds gross. Just the repurposed water, sweat and tears.
Hey man, you drink what you gotta drink.
No,
I love that like it doesn't linger on the sandworm too long. Like as it's eating the harvester, it doesn't stay there for 45 seconds. It does like it's getting swallowed and it goes and then it cuts.
Yeah,
like
we can put the rest in our mind.
Absolutely, because again, like Dune is about sandworms. Dune Part 2 is really about sandworms, though. So like, I'm glad that they didn't go too hard because like they're saving that for how crazy this next part's going to be.
We also see a picture of the sandworms before we see one. I thought that was also kind of like leading up to the thing with the mural,
the wall sculpture.
Yeah. And that's a full-size sandworm, or like a model, like a picture of one. So like you like, oh dang, and then you see one, and you're like, oh dang.
Like you see a picture on the wall, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that doesn't look too scary. You see one out on the wall, you go,
so something that's super interesting. And now that I think about it, it's a bummer that I'm even going to bring this up, Sparks, because they shy away from all the Middle Eastern influences. But in this version of Dune, because this is 10,000 years in the future, so like Russia, China, those things existed, right? So like Yui's a Sook doctor. That's China in 10,000 years or whatever, right? The Sardaukar, like their chant is like Finnish, and Vladimir Harkonnen is Russian, and they lean a little more into the actual like original nationalities of like the people, and like these guys are like doing like Gregorian Finnish chants, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. But then to Sparks' point, I'm like, oh, they left out all that stuff. That sucks. But like,
right, and it purely is like there is no. It's so tough because like Islamophobia has crippled America ever since 2001. It was bad before, but it's worse ever since. And that's such a hard thing, I think, for Dune in particular to overcome because of the nature of what Herbert was doing with the progressiveness about those Middle Eastern things. And like you will only be able to push American audiences so far. So like I hold certain things against the film, and some things I'm just like, just a bummer.
Yeah. I will say like in terms of if somebody else were to direct this movie, I think it would have been far more disastrous. I think in terms of trying to adapt Dune, this is one of the best Hollywood versions you could make. You know what I mean? Like it would never be made perfect. You know what I mean? Like, unfortunately.
Right. I put it more on, like the studio than anything else. And like we alluded to earlier, like the second one has to explore the Fremen culture. So hopefully some things can be done more properly there. I think the most damning thing is like mispronunciations of things that do exist and are those terminologies. And like, it's not hard, like go figure out how to actually say these words. But to audio listeners who aren't watching me, like I agree with all the positives the guys have been saying. I've just been quiet and nodding my head, but I'm not that negative on the film. I do really like the film. I just wanted to poke out those criticisms. I think there's something really interesting done in the allegory of, because this is not a moment from the book that I recall, not this particular thing. Tell me if I'm wrong. It's been a bit. The Baron in the oil bath.
That's new.
To recover from the poison. So that's allegory, and I think it's really smart of Villeneuve to do, because it's allegory for the spice. In our current modern world, the spice is oil. And I thought that was a really nice touch. I thought that conveyed something really, really powerful, really well.
And the image of like, because it's all black, and then like when he goes back down, like the white permeates over it, and it's like, oh, that's art, baby. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There's one thing that he visualizes really interesting in this, and it's faster than light travel, because the way he visualizes it is that there's tunnels, and you don't, it's never explored, it's never mentioned, nobody ever talks about it, but you see it a few times, and you can kind of infer that what's happening is they're entering the tunnel and immediately coming out the next tunnel, but they're light years away into another planet. Because you look, whenever you see a tunnel, you're kind of just looking through it, and you can see the other planet, but the rest of the planet isn't in the background. So to kind of infer, I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I love the
it's
visuals
just-
of all the stuff in space. I think it looks really great.
Like those space tunnels, I thought they were just giant ships with holes in them. I was like, I don't know what that's for.
At first, when we first see him, because we see him top down, I can see how like a shuttle is coming out of it, but it does kind of infer that it's meant to be kind of like a Stargate, like it's you go in one end and you immediately come out the next.
Yeah, man, like all the ship designs are so good.
Again, monolithic.
Yeah,
everything's meant to look like it's like stone and monolithic and ancient.
It feels like, and I don't like using this word as often because it's become like a joke, but like this is epic filmmaking, like in every sense of like the original word of like Lawrence of Arabia, like huge sets, huge crowds, movies like this just don't get made anymore, and when they do, they bomb. So like the fact that it got made and it's as good as it is and people are responding to it, it's just like, it feels like science God is just looking out for us right now. Like
it is really nice that, I mentioned the fact that like the budget for the movie was a lot smaller than I thought it would be, just because of movies. But when it was first put to HBO Max's numbers do indicate some box office, like they are taking some money from the box office, but not in the numbers that we were worried about initially. But we were kind of worried that Dune would suffer the most because of the property being not as well known, or HBO being just like an HBO Max movie. But knowing that it only cost 160 million, that repurposed that restructured everything. Like, it doesn't need to make that much in the theater to be considered a success. It actually didn't cost that much.
And again, like putting Chani so in the marketing and the movie, and having it be one of the biggest celebrities on the planet right now, Zendaya, and Timothée Chalamet. Like, everyone in this movie is every one of these people would be leading their own movie. The whole cast is A-list. That alone, kind of like Fast and the Furious, will bring a lot of people just by how diverse and how big the cast is. The fact that it's also a good movie, and it's something that not a lot of people have seen of recent. Like, again, hardcore science fiction that's this dense and this like good, it doesn't happen that often. So like when it works, people respond to it. Like, again, like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, like when these things work, people gravitate towards them.
I just looked it up, and John Carter cost almost twice of what this movie cost.
Yeah, I bet it did, because Disney.
Yeah.
Disney.
What do they do with all that money, man? They're
Disney, I like that movie, but good lord.
Yeah, I think the difference is that Warner Brothers, they, for the most part, I don't mean to defend Warner Brothers too much, but for the most part, they allow their directors, their producers to have enough time to make the movie they feel like they need to make. Whereas Disney does set their release dates. You got to hit this date, which unfortunately makes the CG artists crunch a lot and don't deliver the type of content that we should be getting for the money they cost.
That's true. I wanted to look up John Carter in particular because there's so many similarity illusions of like where it visually takes place, but like there was also like a lot of on-set filming for that movie, and you're right, like it's mostly being made up in a lot of that CGI budget.
Yeah. CGI, good CGI is $1 million a minute. That's insane.
Well, and it makes a difference just to have somebody who like knows how to do visual language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Villeneuve, on top of everything, 100%, that's the number one go-to of high praise for him, is he knows visual language more than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, like almost every shot in his movie can be a piece of art, and that's how he operates. And that
I love
that works.
So Lucius Secundus, I love it, the look of it. I love religious mercenary warriors, just the idea is really cool, you guys. That's why I love Warhammer so much.
Oh yeah, Helsing took that idea.
They have mercenary bloodmen.
No, they have religious mercenaries.
Hell yeah, it's a cool idea. Sandworms are cool. Kinds. Okay, I think Kinds works in this movie. They do an interesting thing where they don't differentiate between Liet and Kinds. From the beginning of the movie, they're just the same person. Because in the book, you don't know that they're two different people. Or they're the same person, I mean. Because the character was taken out of that movie so much, I think it works for the most part. I think Kinds is a good character. And I love the stuff at the end before her passing.
Me too.
It's really sad. It's a bummer.
You get to see the hooks that she's gonna use to mount the sandworm and ride it, because we do see a guy riding a sandworm.
I thought that was her at the end, but I was like, oh wait, she's dead.
Yeah.
Kinds
is your power.
Kinds is probably my favorite character in the film. It's easy to say it's Jason Momoa and it's stuck in Idaho, but I really do like his performance, and he's got a lot there. But I really liked what they did.
She feels like really connected to like both worlds. Like she does feel like she cares about the Fremen, but also she has a job. But like it's slowly starting to balance in the Fremen's direction. Like her character has probably the best arc, the best.
And when she kind of accepts herself as a Fremen, not one of two worlds, she is a Fremen.
Oh my god,
that's what the end of her martial arc dies.
Her ending is like, no, I believe in Shai Halud. Boom, boom. That's like one of the coolest endings for a character, man.
Also, I thought that was a much better death than the one in the book.
Yes.
Also, one of the things I loved is how they showed us that she got stabbed, because there's no blood, but you see water.
You see water, yeah.
I thought that was a really interesting visual choice, and because you hear the sound and you see liquid. And your brain is going to put to connect the dots that she was stabbed.
She gave her essence for us.
I just thought that.
Batista, Raban, he's fine.
He's not moving very much.
He's just yelling. He's not a real character in my opinion. Which Raban is just the beast. He is a murderer, but that's
he's also not much of a character in the book, so I wasn't expecting a lot.
Yeah.
From him either. It's nice to have Batista. Batista clearly likes working with Denny. So like I'm happy to have him, but you're right, like Raban's he's not anything.
See, the thing is, like, because they didn't put in a character from the book, I expected more of Raban. The fact that he's not in the movie is like fine. I just thought of all the characters in the movie, he is the one that's like he stands out as like, oh, he's just like a character. He's just a dude. To me, more than Gurney. Like Gurney, I will give you credit what you said, but like I see character in there. I just see Batista yelling in this movie.
No, for sure. Like, and that's a scale. Absolutely. Yeah. Like I'm saying, like Gurney feels about on the same level as the Duke, and like there's not a lot to separate the two.
Yeah.
As they are in relation to like the characters we're following of Paul and Jessica. Yeah. But absolutely, like Raban is barely a notch above like any other person in the Baron's army.
Yeah, he's barely a henchman. Yeah. Which I'm excited to see the stuff with him and the other character in the next part of the book.
Yes, I am too.
Yeah.
I'm out of notes.
Let me think. God, I like this movie a lot. Man, I just think I'm just so happy for Denis Villeneuve, man. Like, I'm happy for cinema, because like not to get to a film bro, but we're going to be reviewing a Marvel.
Not to be too much Martin Scorsese, right?
Yeah, but we're going to be reviewing a Marvel movie soon, and I am so curious about how that movie is going to look, because I just saw a less expensive, way denser science fiction movie. So like my level of like, oh, cool sci-fi is really high right now. So I'm super stoked to see what Marvel has to offer.
Until those CGI people unionize, we're not going to see better CG coming out of Disney.
That's unfortunate.
That's my call for them to unionize. Shall we get into final thoughts and ratings?
Piter was cool. His death scene was cool. Sandworms are cool. I like the score a lot. I legitimately have been doing the Sardaukar chant in my brain for like 2 weeks just by myself when I'm bored. That's it. That's my thoughts.
What would you rate it?
Man, I would give it a 9.5. When you ask like Ryan, what type of hardcore science fiction movie do you want to see? This is mostly it. This is 98% it. I wish Denny had a little more emotion in his movies. I've seen all of his movies now, and I can definitely tell he cares more about drama and story. which is fine. Like, he's really good at that, but that makes me a little more worried for the next part of the book, which is a lot more emotion. But this one, I still give it 9.5. I think it's exceptional. Only $165 million.
Ben, since you were about to say something, why don't you go next?
This movie, to me, was a feast. It was a feast for the eyes. It was like the score itself was awesome. Like, instead of like having the Sutter car chant, I had the like that high pitched chant that you hear at the end of the trailer, and that was used throughout the film. Yes, I mean, Ryan, you said earlier this term has been thrown around as like a bit of a joke, but this is an epic film. This is the scale of it is grand. I am really glad I read the book before I went into it. So now it's not obviously it's not a prerequisite, but as reading the book and seeing it on screen and knowing how old the book is, I think I have a new appreciation for this story and how we can put this to the screen. I haven't seen David Lynch's Dune yet. I'm going to watch it eventually, but just seeing
you'll
this
have to.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, but seeing this on screen, it's like this is. I feel like if Frank were alive today, this is what he's like. Yep, that's what they look like. That's what I envisioned when I wrote it. Score, it is a 9.5. This is definitely one of the best films I've seen all year.
Sparks?
Yeah. I echo a lot of the positives. I know I said more negative stuff, I think, in this review than positives, but that's only because you guys had it covered. I think it's visually a treat. I really do love the world building. I do think it's one of the better adaptations I've ever seen from a book to a film. I'm struggling to think of one that isn't the Lord of the Rings that I thought was more accurate while
Maze
also
Runner
being its own.
I'm just kidding. I don't know any of those properties.
Nope, not that one. I just thought about it for a second. I'm like, nope, that's the one where they turned the prominent female character into the sidekick.
The only other adaptation I can like maybe put up there is the first Harry Potter film, Harry Potter and Sorcerer's Stone.
God, I wanted you to say Ready Player One so bad.
No, hell no.
I thought we were gonna go.
You honestly think no? Come on.
No, Ben, I don't honestly think. I just wanted you to say it.
No.
For the joke, for the gag.
Yeah,
Ben is very offended that one of his favorite books has been slandered, apparently.
Hey, Ready Player One is the movie that's going to change video game movies, damn it. Ben Magnet, 2017.
Thank God Free Guy came out.
Anyway, Dune is really, really cool. I do really like it. I do think that I am personally hurt by book knowledge, certainly because it's so fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't lived with it for very long, so I have my knowledge of like, I feel a void in this movie. What am I feeling? And I go, look at the book. This is what you're feeling. And I'm like, oh no!
That's why I'm so excited, because it is not a better movie. But David Lynch's Dune has a lot of the stuff that the book has that this movie doesn't. So I'm so fascinated to see your specific view on it.
I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah.
I really enjoy Dune, all forms of Dune that I've encountered now.
How you doing?
And I really do like this. I think I think it does a lot of great work. It feels like it was a few nudges just away from being like sublime in every way. So with that, I say that I give it about 8.5 feels too low, so I'm gonna say 9.
Bro, this is your life. 8.5 is not a bad score either.
No, but I mean, like, I think that what works for the movie far vastly outweighs what doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything to add from what you guys have said, but I will say it was an 8.5 for me. I'm looking forward to that sequel, though. I can't wait. I'm gonna start reading now that I'm officially done with Dune. I'm starting Dune Messiah tomorrow because I've been waiting because I don't want to get other knowledge into my brain while I talk about it. Now I'm free.
Sure. I do really encourage like anybody who saw the movie and maybe they were left hungry for something or they were wanting to explore some of the stuff we've talked about. Go read the book. Like, the book's well and truly worth it. And if not the book, Ryan, would you recommend the graphic novel?
Yes, it is. It is word for word, almost like it obviously takes out some of the stuff like the movie does.
Right.
But it's word for word the book, and then with some pretty art. Yeah.
Yeah. So
also, the David Lynch movie's fine. The Sci-Fi Mini-Series, the 3-part miniseries, pretty good. Like, it's really low budget, but it's a pretty good adaptation.
I didn't know
Wild.
they did it. I didn't know Sci-Fi did a 3-part.
And they made Children of Dune starring James McAvoy.
Yep.
They skipped a lot.
And also, as is in our show notes, the piece I referenced on Polygon from Roxana Haddadi about Denis Villeneuve's Dune. If you're feeling like something that you want to explore, I highly recommend it. It's a well thought out and earnest piece.
Should we get into our book club then?
It seems like it's that time.